Peter Morris, the actual man of power in Speedway. So your business is heavily dominated by 410 engines?
It is now, yeah. It's pretty well, probably 98% of our business. Now it's just sprint car engines. And obviously we sell the components as well for the cars.
And that's the 2%, or the other 2%?
Yeah, well, we do as far as the engine side of stuff, 98% is purely sprint car. We do now and again, we'll take something on a bit oddball on that, but as the years have gone, the sprint cars has just consumed pretty well all of the business.
So how many engines are you turning out a year?
It's always usually around the 60 to 70 kind of range. It's never really varied much from that. The only difference now is, back then I had probably 3 more staff than I've got now. So, yeah, we just seem to be a bit more organised and work a bit harder.
Yeah. So is that 60 rebuilds a year? Or is that 60?
That includes new ones, rebuilds, repairs.
Yeah. So how many brand spankers are we going out the door a year?
That varies. I mean, this year I've got orders for 8. With the supply of components, I'd only probably be able to do 4 to 6, possibly. But, if I chased them, I could probably do 10 or 12 this year. There's quite a big demand for new engines all of a sudden, right when the supply is probably at its worst since COVID.
Like it is for everything worldwide, sort of.
Pretty well, yeah. Everyone's
is that just based around the shipping from America, like mainly, or?
Well, everything's pretty well made in America. There's various reasons why some suppliers can't supply. The main reason is probably staff. They just so few workers want to work. It's a little bit like that here. That they just can't keep up with the demand, and then soon as people realise there's a little bit of a shortage, something, they double or triple their orders, and then everyone does that, and then there really is short supply.
So is that across the board on components, or
pretty well?
Yeah, there's no one particular component that's holding.
It's been all random things. I mean, I think it was last year bearings were a real issue. Certain gaskets, things like that, rear main seals, just real weird stuff. This year, probably the biggest problem is getting blocks.
Yeah.
That's been they got to 12 months out of supply. Now they've stopped taking orders until they can catch up a bit.
And is that across the board with all the brands and everything like that? Or?
Well, the main one to use is a Donovan, because it's the most used. It's the best. It's so tailor made for a 410 sprint car that it's your first choice. You can get Brodix blocks, but now they're getting swamped because the Donovans are struggling to supply.
Yeah, right. So how did you get started in all of this in the beginning anyway?
Oh, yeah, well, started when I was 15, working here, and it was a chance meeting. John Lewis owned the business back then. And John Bolger is my cousin. You don't know, Speedway bike rider from years ago, and they were going through. I was holidaying with the family in Barmah, and there was a chance meeting. They were going through to Mildura for a race night, and John Bolger asked them for me whether they ever take apprentices on here, and they hadn't, and they said, I'll come round on a Saturday and have a meeting, and I did that, and I got a phone call at school the next Monday, and they said, well, the last intake for the year at trade school's tomorrow, so pack your stuff up and off you go if that's what you want to do. And that was 1976.
Yeah, right.
And that's where it started.
There's a lot of guys I know from like back in that era that went into the motor trade because they could get a license early. They had no interest in cars, but you get your license early, so off they went into the motor industry. But so you obviously had interest in Speedway and stuff?
Well, obviously with John Bolger, always went and watched him race, and our families were very close. His mum and my mum were sisters, and John's father, he was a real tinkerer. He restored old bikes, and he had all sorts of projects on the go. And I spent a lot of time there, school holidays and things like that. And I wasn't real keen on school. I did okay, but I just didn't like it. I definitely needed to be doing something with the hands, and this was something I was interested. Not that I had done much of it up until starting work here. But I kind of haven't looked back.
Just a hands-on sort of
person.
Yeah. So the business wasn't just like race engines back then?
No, back when I started here, they did car servicing. I think they had one of the first chassis dynos in South Australia. So back then, a lot of the lads who were going out on a Saturday night would bring the cars around and get them tuned up and meet wherever, a Burger King or something like that, and do a few skids, and we saw a lot of that. But we did all sorts, just general repairs for cars and wheel lining and all that sort of stuff. And then more and more, we were doing race engines, and that's, just got bigger and bigger until it wasn't until after I took over we took the dyno and hoist and all that out and just made it a full-on race shop.
Was that a big decision?
No. It was hard to get staff to do that sort of work.
Yeah.
Back then, that was probably mid-90s, maybe late 90s, we made that decision. I didn't like doing that anymore. I much prefer the race engine side of things and leaning over a bonnet of a car. And so it was quite an easy decision to make.
Yeah. This is a lot more controllable business-wise than just regular sort of servicing work?
Yeah. I was always a bit conscious of, having all our eggs in one basket, because we did lots of different stuff and everything like that. But I kind of figured so long as sprint cars stay popular, we're all right, and which they have. Obviously they've been thriving ever since.
Yeah. Do you remember your first sprint car engine that you built?
No, I remember the first engine I ever built, and it was one of the first jobs I got here. I had to pull a engine out of a Lotus sports car, twin cam Lotus engine, and pull that apart. And we didn't do any machining then, so everything was sent out. Pulled it apart and had it all machined and come back, and they kept a pretty close eye on me because I was pretty raw, but I had to put that together, and that was the first job I ever did here.
Yeah, right.
I thought it was great.
Yeah. No dramas with it. It was all good.
Yeah, no, it was pretty good. Yeah.
So what is that, like late 70s then, or it's early?
Yeah, well, 76 I started, March 76. That would have been right then. I was first year apprentice. And being the first apprentice, I'm not sure why, but John Lewis kind of took me under his wing, and they had other mechanics here and that, and I don't think they were too happy about it. But I was getting, a lot of the good jobs. It seemed like he really wanted to teach me that side of it.
Yeah. So he obviously seen something in you to take you. Like
Yeah.
So the sprint car engines haven't exactly evolved much over time, have they? Really, like they're still pretty similar to the way that they started out. More
or less, and that's what I like about the sprint car. I did a lot of speedway bike engines, and they're kind of similar, where they don't have computers and electronics and being able to program, and it's all very mechanical, and that's what I like.
Yeah.
Where you don't need a computer nerd person to come along and
do something.
Yeah, pretty well, to build. Yeah. So I kind of like that, to keep it raw. It's just very mechanical, and the rules. Obviously, they've got to be a push rod, 2-valve motor, and mechanical injection, and no electronic ignition, and that. So it's very, very basic, and I enjoy that.
Yeah, I think that translates to the sound of them as well. It's just they're so raw sounding.
Yeah,
the way that they are. To me, there's no better sound.
No. And that's what I like about it too.
Yeah. So you would have started off building 360s before we even had 410s, I suppose.
Well, I would have started Rolly Park days. People like Phil Hareen and Zeke Agars and all that were customers here. And Zeke always ran the 6-cylinder, turbo 6-cylinder. First ever classic winner, and then Phil Hareen, that was more the V8, all steel block and so forth. They were, but and they obviously started 360, and then as they needed to reclaim blocks and get a bit bigger and a bit bigger, they went to 366, and then somehow we ended up at 372, which was a little bit oddball. And most people will know the massive push to get to 410s, and so we're in line with America.
Did that make it heaps easier once that happened? Or was that a learning curve to go that little bit bigger? And
it wasn't really a big deal. Everyone thought it'd be a big deal, but it wasn't. There was a significant cost because everyone who had a 372 needed to upgrade. They all needed a crankshaft and rods and pistons or whatever to get them to that capacity. But that all, like in hindsight, looking back on it now, it all seemed to go pretty smooth, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your thoughts on the 360s to 410s?
I think there's a place for both of them. And I enjoyed both of them. I enjoy watching both classes. I think, they definitely need stepping stones. Very, very hard to go straight into 410 racing. The only real, other than wingless, which, doesn't give you teach you the same sort of skills, I don't think, as a wing car. The 360s is a really good stepping stone. Where 360s have gone, though, in recent is they're quite expensive. Now, an engine for one of them is, like if you had to build a new one, is not a lot cheaper than a 410. Maybe 8-10 grand cheaper. So they're quite expensive. But the racing's good. It's a different level of competitor. You still get the very, very quick ones, but you also get the beginners. There's through an A main, there's a big difference of abilities and experience, which makes it pretty entertaining.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on the LS coming in?
Yeah, I think they needed it. They needed definitely a cheaper. Like I said, the 360s engines are expensive, so that's hard for entry level. They needed something. I don't know that I necessarily agree with the way they did it. It seems that they introduced the LSs, which is a great idea, crate engine, controlled, everything like that. But they didn't really have hard rules when they brought it in. They just let everyone use it and see where it progressed. And then, it was a year or two later, we saw some firm rules on it. And it'll be interesting to see where it goes. It seems, in Victoria, they have pretty good numbers and they probably could run a class on their own, really.
Yeah, it seems to be the way to go for a lot of guys in terms of everyone's saying they get 40 plus nights before a rebuild and stuff like that.
As long as they keep the engine control, because as soon as you start letting them do this and do that and get a bit more performance to make them, this is where I don't really agree with them racing the current 360s and that, because they want to be competitive in that class. Well, they're going to have to relax some of the rules on the LS, but then they won't be doing that many meetings. Yeah. They'll be like the 360s where you've got to get them rebuilt every 25 nights or whatever.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden the money's out of it, it's gone. We're back to where we were.
Yeah, so I would have preferred they were their own class. I think it's a great idea. I don't know. The trouble is the population in Australia, it's hard to have lots and lots of different classes. So I'm not really sure what the answer is there.
Yeah. I'd really like to see the LS go into the wingless, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm such a massive fan of non-wing racing in America. I watch it flat out, and so to watch that, on the weekend on streaming, and then see what our wingless are, it's very it's a huge disparity.
Right? Yeah. I watch the wingless now, and I think they just don't sound a V6 with that type of exhaust doesn't really sound quite nice. A V8 would sound so much better.
Like in my mind, the V8 might bring more crowd in, and then you might be able to get a few more drivers over from America during the summers and stuff. I think it would just be good all round. So,
yeah, for sure.
So how does one start even building one of these? Like, where do you even start sourcing all the parts and like?
Yeah, it's a challenge, especially in these times. But we've done it for so many years; it just happens automatically. But there's a lot of different suppliers and a lot of different components, and you've got to try and get that all to come in at the same time so you can complete an engine. Like I said, the blocks, have been up to 12 months. Crankshafts, might be 3 or 4 months. There's other stuff you can get, almost straight away. And that's always changing now, but pre-COVID, it was pretty good. You could just accumulate just about everything in a couple of months.
Yeah.
And start from scratch. Now you've got to plan probably the season before for next season.
Yeah, right.
And it's a massive amount more stock we've got to keep, because of the supply is very flaky.
Yeah. Yeah. So how long would you be looking at building one from top to bottom?
Time-wise?
Yeah.
Once we've got all the parts? Well, we do all our own machining. Generally, that goes through in batches and all that sort of stuff. But I guess from start to finish, you're going to, and by the time you dyno it and everything like that, it's going to be 2 weeks.
Yeah, right.
But you don't do it that way. You don't just do, we've got, I don't know, 60 odd engines sitting in the workshop at the moment. So you've got to do a bit of everything and
yeah,
yeah,
to try and keep them going out the door, sort of thing.
Yeah. Especially now, it's a lot more unorganised these days because pre-COVID we'd pull maybe 10 apart and then get the parts ordered for them, get them all crack tested, machined, and all that. Then pull the next batch apart. But because you've got to get the parts so much earlier and you've got to get everything apart, so there's bits and pieces everywhere. It's really a challenge to keep it still half organised.
Yeah. Is that like regular site to C60 sitting here? Like, is that a normal number, or is that?
No, that's
probably a bit high. Cause it's just
it's as high as it's been for a long time, I think. Yeah. It's, like prior to you getting here today, we probably spent 3 hours this afternoon moving engines around because we're just running out of floor space. We've found other places to put them up the top and that. It's a challenge.
And the engines are coming in from everywhere, aren't they? Like all over Australia. You got a bunch over New Zealand as well.
Got quite a few in New Zealand. Got a couple in America. The Williams Motorsport. I've got a association with Ashley, who runs the team over there. He's an Adelaide boy. He used to crew for Phil March. He lives over there. He's lived over there for quite a while now, and I've done his stuff for a long time now. Logistically, it's not really viable with the freight and all of that sort of stuff, but it's just pretty cool to keep in touch. And they're based in California and see how the stuff runs. So I've always done their stuff. I've got one back at the moment we're doing for them.
So how many you got in America in total?
Well, they've got 3 motors over there.
Yeah. So there's no others sort of floating around out anywhere, or?
Not that I know of.
No.
Not at this stage. We've had other customers over there that have gone over there and raced and taken our stuff over there, but as far as a regular over there, it's mainly just been the Williams Motorsport team.
Because that's probably the one thing that people sort of might not know is the logistics about sending a motor back and forth is, that can sort of, someone can be like hot property in the engine game, but, they might live so far away that freighting engines back and forth just becomes a hassle.
Especially now with the freight. The freight's obviously quite a lot dearer. There's quite a lot of surcharges on air freight and things like that, which has made it quite expensive. I mean, to air freight a motor backwards and forwards, it's probably a minimum of $5,000
to America.
Yeah, backwards and forwards. Probably more like 6.
Yeah, that was one thing that I heard was that like what a full container pre-COVID you could bring out for like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, and now they're upwards of like $28,000-$32,000, and that's where the cost of everything has skyrocketed.
Well, it's not only that, if you decide to sea freight them, which is a lot cheaper if you can get them into a loaded container, the containers have been quite unreliable with when they ship and whether they make the ship or don't make the ship, and there's all sorts of delays on that side of things. We've nearly always air freighted them and just paid the money, and
just the way to do it.
They'll turn up the next week.
Yeah. So how many motors sort of come in and out a week?
Oh yeah, it's at the moment more are coming in than going out. Yeah, I mean we've had weeks, where 5, 6 motors turn up, um, and but it's this time of year it's pretty steady. They're all and they, I'm stressing to people you need to get them back early for us to have a chance to get them done by the start of the season. Whereas in the past, I'd say, oh, don't send it until August or something. We'll still get it done.
Yeah.
But we just can't guarantee that now. Everything's so custom these days in the motors. In the old days, it'd be a set of JE pistons, part number something, and you'd get them off the shelf. Now, there's just everything's just so custom. Even the cranks and everything is. There's so many variations you can put on things. It's just nearly impossible to keep stock of everything.
Yeah, like when I said before that the technology hasn't really evolved in the sprint cars, probably the basis of it hasn't changed, but the technology within the parts itself and the way they're manufactured would have changed drastically.
Yeah, massively. The quality of the components you can get now is really in the last few years it's taken another step with how sophisticated that stuff's getting, but how expensive it's getting too.
Yeah. Have you ever considered making your own parts of any type or anything like that, or
not really?
No, just not viable.
It probably is. When the dollar's quite low, it probably is viable. When the dollar's 80 cents plus, I suppose it isn't. You won't be able to compete price wise. But I took a trip to Performance Wholesale a couple of weeks ago, and they're making their own heads and blocks, and they're having a pretty good go at manufacturing some stuff.
Yeah.
Just for sprint car.
Yeah, and that's based around necessity.
Pretty well.
Yeah.
There's
obviously a space in the market for it as well.
Absolutely.
But it's then getting to the necessity of. Yeah, it's great to see someone's going back to making stuff here.
Oh, I'd love to buy local, for sure. But it's for the outlay to make the stuff. It's not a huge market, because most of the stuff now is pretty custom 410 sprint car. It doesn't, the blocks, they wouldn't even bolt in a road car. There's nowhere to bolt start a motor and all that. It's just so customized to a sprint car application that, so you've only got a market of however many competitors are in Australia. It's, it's a brave move to.
Yeah, and unless you could really make it work for the American market, but then you get to run into that trouble with the freighting engines back and forth and that.
That's right.
So then you kind of screw yourself over there.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting sort of saga to have, though, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's, it's one of the challenges of building the engines too. There's most of your engine builders around the place. There's not a component in that engine they make. Yet, whenever you go to the races, there's so and so's engine blew up. It's normally a component failure. And we didn't make any of the components. We've just, our job is to try and source the best component for the most reasonable price, and the lightest and everything, but still get reliability out of it.
Yeah.
So that's a real challenge.
Yeah, because what's one of the most common part failures? Because you quite often hear about such and such has done a motor, or the engine blew up in that heat, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it blew to smithereens. They're
normally a tune-up related failure is the most common, which will be a burn down, or a piston will break, or it'll blow head gaskets, or drop valves or something like that. That's probably the most common. But being a pushrod engine, the overhead gear is really quite vulnerable, because most of them don't have rev limiters on them. They can jump wheels and go through wet patches, and the things will rev to 10 grand, and they're not very. All that stuff isn't very happy when it does that. Where you look at, say, circuit racing, everything's rev limited and so controlled that you don't necessarily have any of those issues. So yeah, I'd say probably tune-up related issues are probably the main ones, and then overhead stuff, broken valve spring or a rocker failure or something like that.
Yeah, I think we just it's just such a common sort of term thrown around that that motor blew up, and it's not necessarily the case, is it?
Well, something's gone wrong, but it could be, something quite minor. It could be a spring that they catch it early enough, it just dropped the cylinder. It hasn't necessarily blown up. That you can swap that out and be back out the next week.
Yeah. Have you seen many like catastrophic failures? Like, yeah.
We've seen some pretty good ones. I know probably the worst one I've seen is probably one Luke Dillon did in Perth, and I think he needed to finish wherever to be somewhere in a series or points or something like that. So he kept driving this thing, and when he probably should have pulled in, but pulled the whole centre of the block out of it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive.
I've seen a few blocks pull apart from crashes, but not necessarily like a rod or a piston sort of.
This broke all the main webbing and everything out of the block completely.
It sounds like a Luke Dillon sort of.
He's
all or nothing.
Yeah.
So
it takes a gear out.
Because you got quite a lot of motors in Perth, don't you?
Perth's been very good to us. Yeah. We've got some really good customers in Perth. Obviously the Crickies and Diamond Bay and Mayolos and people like that have been very loyal, and we're kind of like friends really. Part of the family type thing. Perth's been very good.
Yeah. Do you build motors any different for over there, considering how big the track is there?
Yes. Yeah, you do. You need, when you're on the small tracks, you've got a good driver and he's got a good car. The motor just needs to be okay. But over there on the big open tracks, you've got nowhere to hide. So if you don't have something that's running quite good, you're exposed.
Yeah.
And we enjoy that. We've always felt that's been one of our strengths. We've had stuff that's got the power to run on the big tracks.
Yeah. Are they actually up around the 900 horsepower mark plus?
Yep.
Or is that? Yeah, they definitely are.
Yep. They're definitely genuine 900 plus horsepower.
Yeah.
But there's circumstances where they don't want that. They'd run better around and be better on the track around the 870, 880 horsepower. By the shape of the power curve and the surfaces they're racing on and things like that. You could easily make mid to high 900s out of these things, but they'd be undrivable on dirt. It would be silly.
Yeah. Someone in New Zealand said to me that theirs is like well below 900 because of the track style that's over there. But
we do engines for Michael Pickens.
Yeah.
I think the first one we did for his, which he's won a lot of races, is 830, 840, something like that. Yeah.
Have you seen anything go like well above 900?
Yeah. We've seen on our dyno, we've seen I think 940 something. I think on motors.
Yeah, and they've gone out the door kind of thing, or they've.
Yeah. No, we've used them, and exactly that. On some tracks they're just too aggressive and powerful. Some tracks you can get away with it, and it's maybe a little bit of an advantage. But I think if you're cracking 900, give or take 10 horsepower, if you've got a good power curve, you'll be in the game. If you've got a good drive and a good car setup, that's enough.
Yeah, I remember hearing years ago rumours of like there's a few thousand horsepower ones down there, but do you believe those sorts of stories, or
No,
because you can see right through it.
No. Well, the dynos don't lie; it's only the operators.
Yeah.
So it's if they did, it wouldn't be very good on dirt.
Yeah, or it wouldn't last very long.
Look, by the time feature time comes, even with 900 horsepower, most people are trying to put restrictors in them and slow the engines down because the track's slowed down. They've gone from doing say 9-second laps to 13-second laps.
Yeah.
Like Warrnambool, for example. When it's fast, they're doing low 10-second laps. When it's slow, they're 12, 13-second laps. It's no use having all that power when the track's so slow. It's too hard to drive, and it's too small a window to get the car set up right. You need to slow the engine down.
Yeah, because you've gone from like maybe 9 other cars being on the track with you to like 22 cars being out there as well. So
the traffic.
The traffic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any like memorable wins of a car with your engine in it?
With the cars, always the main races. The Australian titles, classics are always a good one. But to be honest, like I get just as good a buzz out of if you're helping someone who's just started or struggles a bit and they win their first heat race or make their first A main or something like that. That because the guys that are winning Australian titles and things like that, they're winning a lot of races anyway, and it's still good for them and that. But when you see like someone who's on the upward trajectory of competing and that all these milestones happen for them, it's pretty exciting.
Do the phone calls increase after you've won like an Australian title or something?
Not really.
No?
Not really. No, I don't think so. It's just business as usual, really.
Yeah. Old adages of win on Sunday, sell on Monday.
No, not really. I mean, I think people would, if you go through periods where you work with the team and all of a sudden they're really doing well over a season. That then people start ringing and hey, what have you got going on with them? And that does result in sales and things like that. One race, I don't really think so.
Yeah, because generally you guys are like pretty loyal to an engine like builder as such too, aren't they?
Yeah, but you still got to produce. If they think something's better down the road, they want to win. So sometimes it's a decision they make, and that's fine. If they think they can get something better somewhere else that suits them, so be it.
Yeah, so they're either loyal or they're not.
yeah. I mean, some people will work through issues. You might have issues with some people. You might have a run of like I go back to the components. Anything can happen. You can be using exactly the same valve spring forever, and then all of a sudden, in the foundry they'll get an inclusion problem in some material, and the next thing valve springs are breaking all the time. You're not doing anything different. But the competitor gets disappointed, obviously, and they want answers, and that and that'll happen with all sorts of components and things like that, and you've got to work through that. You've got to, at the end of the day, you've got to still keep their trust and come to a result that everyone's kind of half happy with, and if you can't do that, then possibly they'll go elsewhere.
You're such a major component of the car that it's
it's motor racing. It's not people racing, is it, or chassis racing?
Yeah,
it's all about the motor.
I think the late model guys would disagree on that one there. They love the chassis stuff in late models. They froth over
crazy.
It. But that's
them things so complicated.
That's such a big deal that I see on social media in America is about the chassis and stuff like that.
And that's the same with the sprint car racing at the moment. The shocks are such a big deal and have been, for quite a few years now. They're from what we're doing 10 years ago to now is massive.
It's huge, yeah. That's what I spoke with Jamie Cobby about. Like probably the biggest like technological advance in the car is being the bleeder in like recent years. Like currently electric bullet bleeders, but nothing's come along like that in terms of engines or anything like that, has there?
No, not really. I mean, we are controlled with things like that. Where you can't just put an electronic injection on it. It's not allowed in the rules. So they will stay. The engine side of it's basically a raw engine. It's still based off a 350 Chev.
Yeah. Do you see anything like that coming in the future?
I hope not, because that'll bring more costs and
and
that's what I like about this. say mechanical, and it's more fun to do the circuit racing stuff, the supercars and all that. It doesn't really do anything for me. I think that's my personal opinion. It's so controlled. You're controlled of what components you can use, and they're always, trying to get the parity right and keep them even and all that. And well, that's my job to try and get our customer an advantage. So that would be very frustrating for me.
Yeah. I could be totally wrong because I don't follow Vet Supercars, but from what I know, they come at the end of the meeting and take your computer away from the vehicle so that you can't do anything during the week with it and stuff like that. Like, you've got to talk to Vet Supercars. Oh, we want to go test on this day, and someone from Vet Supercars has got to come and give you back your computer so you can get going again, kind of thing. It's like, to me, that none of that sort of stuff.
Not for me.
Nah, to be completely honest, circuit racing does not interest me one bit either.
No, I honestly think, if you can put up with going home with dirt in your hair and things like that, that the Speedway's got so much more to offer as entertainment value. You can see the whole race right in front of you.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen around the corner that you miss. And, so many races on a night, there's X number of heat races and dashes and all that. You get always the track evolves, changes. You generally always get something that's quite entertaining. I don't get that out of bitumen racing.
No, I don't. The only thing I get in bitumen racing is pavement and midget sprint cars. Yeah, that's as far as I delve into pavement stuff. But that's sort of still keeping it pretty close.
But everyone's to their own. Obviously, the supercars are popular. They have an event in Adelaide, and 100,000 people will go to. I don't know how many people would go to it if they didn't have a rock concert on and things like that. But it has its place. It's just probably not really, and it never really has been my cup of tea.
Yeah, I have such a hard time trying to get people across the speedway who like they might still be a full blown rev head, but trying to explain to them what can happen in a 30 lap sprint car race, it just doesn't. I don't know. It's that whole thing of like, oh, it's dusty, it's dirty. It's like, but to me, it's like there's nothing better. Like, it's just,
like I said, if you can put up with a bit of dust in your hair and that, you can be entertained. There's always something going on somewhere on the track.
Yeah, I don't know. I've said it already before, but it's like we don't do a good enough job in explaining those sorts of things that are happening across the night to the regular punter either, though.
No, probably, maybe the controlling body, need to step up and promote it a little bit better, or I don't know what the answer is. Having tracks closed down, in capital cities doesn't help for the exposure and so forth.
Yeah, that's obviously we just lost Brisbane on the weekend, and that's you can't see, much like us here in Adelaide, we're not going to get another. I can't see Speedway City making a comeback.
No, it hasn't now. It's been 6 years or so. It's looking probably like it's not going to happen. I agree.
Yeah, and I assume that Brisbane's in the same position.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Well, they're in exactly the same position, because a lot, some of the argument is, well, you've got a track at Murray Bridge, so, why do you need government help to build another track here or whatever? And Brisbane will be the same. They've got Toowoomba, a couple of hours down the road, so convincing someone to invest a lot of money, whether it be government or whatever, into doing another track is going to be a real challenge.
Yeah. To me, it's a bit of a hard thing to say. Like, oh, there's one an hour away. It's like, and then at the same time too, it's like, what is an hour travel? But it's like, as much as I'd love to see Speedway City come back again, because just the memories and stuff like that there, and to me, there was nothing better than boxing night there.
Yeah, that's right. Some very good memories about that. Packed the joint out. Everyone seemed to have a good time. Everyone's in the festive mood because it was all holiday season. Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
We had it very, very good back then. And it's just a shame it's got to this stage.
I remember like World Series would be like maybe like engine like motor heat had just finished or something like that, and like I remember seeing you in the infield with the van just running from car to car. Like you must have had so many motors out
I was
there.
younger then too.
Yeah, so it was like
Yeah.
Is that you just checking up on stuff or like
Pretty well, yeah. Usually, and obviously, a big event like that being in our own state, there was probably more than 50% of the competitors were using our engines. So we would always, well, I would, try to make yourself available and, just make sure everything's going all right, or if there was issues, you needed to be there. Hopefully there wasn't too many at the same time because that become an issue.
Yeah,
myself.
I think I have seen people like sort of raise their hand to you, and someone's done it on the other side of the infield as well, and it's like sort of you're on your own there, sort of running around.
We just do our best.
Yeah, but oh man, the thing that you had like 50% of the engines out there is pretty crazy.
Yeah, we've gone through periods where it has been in this state particularly crazy with numbers. We've gone to Mount Gambier at big meetings, and every second car or more than every second car goes past, and it's one of our stickers on the tank. And you wonder how you get to that level and how you maintain it, but it happens over such a gradual period of time. It's just,
it's just a testament to what you've done, sort of thing, isn't it? Really? Like,
I'm very happy. I've had some really good people work here. It's not just me. It's Scott Hoskin worked here for a lot of years, and he was, always at the track helping people and things like that, and was a big part of it. Chad here now, and he races himself. But he's always, helping people out and things like that. It's always been, a pretty good team here.
Yeah. There's and you've got like super sedan stuff as well. You guys running your stuff there?
Yep, bit of super sedan stuff. Not as much as what we used to do. Once again, we kind of can't really put as much time and effort into that as we've got a few customers that we look after and always have looked after, and I won't say I won't do it, but I definitely wouldn't be able to take any new customers on that side of it.
Is that just because of how different those engines are to the
Not really. Not really. It's really only the carburetor compared to injection is the really only different thing you got to get your head around. Mechanically, they've all got rods and pistons and cams and heads and all that. Everything's kind of the same. We've had some fun doing those things. Had people win a few Australian titles and that sort of thing. It's been, for the number we've done, we've had some really terrific success.
Do you what's your take on like the whole Ford thing coming into sprint cars? Well, not coming into it, but the new, I don't know what's the word to use, like the revival of it, I suppose, that's come back into sprint cars in the last few years.
Oh, I think it's good. It's nothing new really. Ford's, did a push years ago with all the Roush 8s, 360s and that. Toyota's coming to it. I think I don't see any problem with it. It could pick up potential sponsors for people. You have different brands out there. A Toyota dealer, or a Ford dealer or something might come on board with someone who's using something like that. I'm never frightened of competition. If they're coming up with something, better or whatever, I'm all for it.
Yeah. I don't. I suppose it's because of what you see on like social media in America when the TRD stuff sort of started coming into sprint cars. There was a lot of unhappy Americans on social media around it. And little do they know that all that stuff's made in North Carolina. It's like nothing has come from Japan for the motor. It's like sure, okay, the company's Japanese, but everything's come out of North Carolina, which is like And when you look at like North Carolina, the motorsport like hub that is there is just out of control. It's wild. That little hub that's there and stuff that's getting made and
I think it's good other manufacturers come into it. I think it can only help the sport really.
Yeah, well, I mean, like look at what Toyota's done with midgets. They've just like the amount of money that they must have put into midgets over the years must be like crazy. So don't see it being a problem. I'm all for it. Like, there's probably not really any other manufacturer that's going to come into it per se, though. Right.
I wouldn't think so. I mean, Mopar tried to break into the sprint car market, and they did, somewhat, but that's all kind of fizzled out now. It's very hard. There's so many Chevs in a sprint car, and there's so many of them getting built and raced, and every weekend there's so much development just on that Chev. For another brand to come in, there's always things that are different. The exhaust are different, motor plate's different. Whatever. If they're only as good as a Chev, why would you bother? If they're better than a Chev, well, fair enough. But that's the hurdle they face. It's a pretty big task to compete against something that's evolved over all these years and have oodles and oodles of people developing it. There's so many companies just specialise on doing sprint car Chev head ports and Fords look like they're getting their act together pretty good, and that's fair play to them. But I think it's really hard.
Yeah, can imagine starting from scratch. Like poor old Donny's copped it hard on social media after what's sort of like the season that he's having, but it's like they sort of seem to be coming out the end of it now, and should be back to his old ways. And I mean the Toyota seems to be pretty good straight off the mark, sort of thing.
Yeah. I'm not sure where they're at. I know they had a lot of reliability trouble last season. I spoke to Kerry Madsen about it, and they ran pretty good, but only for a few meetings, and then breaking cranks and doing all sorts of stuff they shouldn't be doing. I guess this year seems to be a bit better on the track. They, when whoever's using them gets their act together and that, they seem, quick enough.
Yeah, they've been involved with 360s for quite a while, Toyota. They've been doing that and Silver Crown cars for quite a while. Like it's not the 410 stuff's not sort of it's not like they just overnight decided, hey, we're going to go down this road. It's like it's sort of been an evolving thing for many years with them. So you guys obviously have your recipe together as such for these things. Like you don't stray too far out of anything.
No, we're always straying. Unfortunately, that's part of it. That's the only thing I enjoy about it. Is to try whatever's new. We'll try, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. It'd be very easy just to have one reasonable engine and just keep supplying that to everybody. Business would be quite a lot easier, and that, but it's not really what gives me a thrill. I try all sorts of different combinations and that, even, one customer, might have 3 engines. I might have them all set a little bit different, and then, they'll tell me, they like this one a bit better than that one, and then we'll change that around and maybe look for a bit more out of that one. And that's the fun of it.
Because you're right on this like weird like tipping point of horsepower and reliability as well, aren't you? It's not
only that, because I had so much to do with the speedway bikes in earlier days. It was a lot about not who had the most power, it's who had the most controllable power, because they don't, they've got no suspension, no electronics, they've got their body weight that can move backwards and forwards, and that's it. So
the clutch, the crazy bastards.
No gearbox, no brakes. So super important that you can tune an engine to match the rider. And that's where they get their success from, and it's massive. I don't know if you watch the Speedway Bike Grand Prix, but they're always tinkering. They're always swapping engine tuners, and that it's just so important. I learnt that from the bikes, that it needed to come into the sprint cars, because not everyone drives the car, not everyone drives the same car, not everyone's on the same tracks. They all got different requirements, and if you can customize it to their own needs, that's might be the fifth per second they're looking for.
Yeah. So you'd obviously know sort of building engines to what that person.
We try to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As much. Yeah. I actually heard. I watched a doco on Ed Pink, and he said when he was getting orders for his midget engines in the beginning, he would ring around and find out what that person was like, and he would build that engine knowing that, they don't do so much maintenance, or they will do heaps of maintenance. He would build that engine based around what knowledge he could find out of them, because he didn't want to send out an engine to them that was like an absolute stinker, knowing that they're not going to do the maintenance on it, and then it will blow up because comes back to his name, sort of thing.
Yeah, we do a bit the same, really. If we're building an engine, say, for Cricket Motorsport, it'll be, on the edge. We're not building an engine for someone who's a beginner over in New Zealand, for instance, because they've got to learn to look after the thing as well. They've got to learn to keep on top of the tune-up, because if you gave them an engine that's on the edge, it'll end in tears, if they just miss their tune setting a little bit. Something will go wrong with it, more than likely.
So after a meeting too, the maintenance on one is quite substantial, isn't it?
It should be, to do it properly. It is, because, like I said before, the overhead gear is quite susceptible. That's one of the things we try to get people to do pretty well every meeting is, check the springs, check your tappets, and the big thing is, if you've got a loose tappet or a tight tappet or whatever, it's a sign something's not right. So don't just readjust it and go out next meeting, because you'll probably find out why that tappet was loose, or it's collapsing a lifter or whatever, or stretching a valve, or something's going wrong. So we try to educate people that we want you to do your tappets, but we want you to be aware that if something's moving or something, it's a sign. Let's have a closer look at it. As well as keeping the fuel system clean. Obviously, clean your nozzles and air cleaners and things like that. Keep the dirt out of the engines. It'll save you a massive amount of money when you go to do a rebuild.
So how many hours would you be looking at doing that?
To do the maintenance? Oh, once you've washed it, everything like that, it should only take you a couple of hours really to run the motor. The plugs out, and then you CRC the bores, and make sure it's all the methanol's out of it. Then for us, we're doing them all day long. To run the top end, the springs and all that, it's pretty quick. But even for people that don't do it all the time, it shouldn't take you really longer than a couple of hours, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, right. It's a lot quicker than I thought. I thought you were up around the sort of 40 hours. There's
more in the car, in the maintenance in the car.
Yeah.
Really, if you want to really be at the top of your game in that, you're always pulling the bars, everything off, and re-greasing everything, drive lines and all that sort of stuff. The engine, probably, unless something's wrong, then it'll take a while to either diagnose it or whatever.
Yeah. So there's not really any quick fixes if sort of something's gone wrong either?
Not these days. You usually need to get in there and repair it properly. You patch it, it will usually bite you in the bum down the track a little bit.
Yeah, if not the same night.
Yeah. We can do things at the track. People have damaged rockers or whatever, and I carry in the van all rockers, and I can get them going again and that. But probably the next week I'd need to have a look at it and make sure nothing else is going wrong.
Yeah. So with the machining side of things, it's all in-house. Nothing goes out the door anymore?
Pretty well. We do everything other than crank grinding. We pretty well do everything in-house.
Yeah, and that's obviously just a necessity. You can't wait on things going out the door and coming back. And
the only way to get something done exactly how you want to do it is to do it yourself. Quite often when you're machining things, there's always decisions to be made. Say you only want the head cleaned up a little bit, or there's a bit of a low spot. Can I afford to take a little bit more off the head? Or if you're sending it out the door, they're just going to do whatever. So I'd rather all those decisions were made in-house.
Yeah.
Same with you if you're doing the heads. You get maybe one seat that's pounded out a bit and it's too low, and do we need to reinsert that, or do I cut them all down to that? There's always decisions and things to be made, and when we were sending everything out, you put that in someone else's hands.
Yeah. So there's a lot of conversations that go into building it or rebuilding one. It's not just you're not just sort of going for it? Like it's
No, we've got a basic recipe we follow. We've worked out, how long components need to be in there before we'll get them out before they break. And that evolves over time, as things get a little bit better or a little bit lighter or something, you might keep modifying that. But we've got a basic recipe of, how many nights before the pistons, even if they crack test okay, we'll leave in and take out. And same with rod bolts and rods and cranks and all that. They've all got a lifespan in a sprint car engine. And, our job is to try and get as many nights as we can out of the stuff so the customer gets the best value for money, but get it out of there before it breaks and causes a big bill.
Yeah. That's actually surprised me. I didn't think you would have had as many conversations around that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
we've got a bit of a rule here that if we've got to talk about whether we should be replacing something or not, the fact that we're having that conversation probably means we should be replacing it to be on the safe side.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about these things.
Yeah, but it's not only that, it's also the configuration of the engine. Do we try a different cam? Do we move the cam? Try a bit more compression, less compression. There's all sorts of things as we're doing just a basic freshen up that we'll have discussions about.
Yeah, right.
Is the customer happy? Does he think it's down a bit or could be a bit this or a bit that? Is it too aggressive? We might, look at changing his tune-up, different nozzle configurations, or talking him through, putting restrictors in and how to modify the tune-up when you do that. There's lots of stuff.
It's man, you must have learnt so much over the years, eh?
Yeah, well, over 45 years, so I'd like to think I've learnt a fair bit. But and it doesn't really mean anything to me because it's happened so gradual over all the years. It's just comes second nature to us. But
it's all the like I couldn't even comprehend all the amount of data that must be in your head from
what's a real shame these days is it's the same as America. There's very few people looking to go into trades, and in the in the 90s and that we'd have people all the time coming, any jobs, can I come after school and do some work, and you don't get anyone these days. And I've got 45, nearly 50 years of knowledge that should be passed on to people. Which should be the same as when I started here. With John Lewis, he passed all his knowledge on to me. I should be doing that, but there just isn't the people. It's quite weird at times now where there's so few people really want to do trades.
Yeah, that's where you just hopefully you don't see this go, but it's where you do see stuff go by the wayside.
Yeah,
isn't it?
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And all the old guys, that are really skilled in whatever they do, they're not getting any younger.
Yeah, it's the craftsman stuff's just gone. Yeah. I actually watched totally off topic, but I watched a really weird documentary on a scissor maker in the UK, and he had his first apprentice in 22 years.
Yeah,
and it was just to think that once upon a time the guys were making scissors from scratch, not just robots were just pumping them out. It actually blew my mind. I didn't know that it was a thing. There's so many things like that have just disappeared, and it's
a lot of dying arts out there. Hand porting heads. Everything comes off a CNC mill now. There's not that many people that have grown up, hand porting them and working out the shapes and things like that. But there's still someone has to do it. To program the machine to do it. So, things like that, it disturbs me a bit that, there just isn't there doesn't seem to be enough of a group of people coming through taking that on.
Yeah, it's, well, in another weird way, they seen it a few years ago in New South Wales with bricklayers. There was no one took on any apprentices, and then the gap from the retirees to the tradesmen, there was no apprentices. So then all of a sudden the guys that were left were making bulk money because they were just flat out because there was no no one had come through the ranks, kind of thing, to share the load.
That's right.
Like, so we're definitely living in different times with all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
like,
it'd be interesting to see where we are in 20 years' time.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you're doing another one or something.
No,
but,
I don't think I'll be here. But
yeah. So retirement plan there of some sort?
Oh, yeah, I'd be lying if I didn't say I don't think about it quite regular. I always said, 65 is probably when I want to not stop but slow down. That's only a few years away. But yeah, who knows? It's how would you just stop a business?
Yeah. You strike me as the kind of guy too that would get bored in retirement.
Oh well, you've got to have something to do, don't you? So even if I wanted to slow it down, I'd still want to do something. To you don't really want to get to the point where there's no point in getting up in the morning, do you?
No.
Yeah, you've got to have something. But it's been at quite a high level for a long time, and I'm finding it more of a challenge now because it's so hard to do the engines now with the supply problems. It's really, that's wearing me out more than anything.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know what that's like in construction and ordering materials and stuff. It's probably not really any different per se. It's just
yeah. Well, we've been a little bit unique because nearly 100% of the engines was what we buy in. I'm buying direct from a manufacturer. I don't go to a wholesaler and just buy this and this. I go to the people that make the conrods. I go to the people that make the pistons, and that's very time consuming. And when there's problems like we're in at the moment with supply problems, it's just super hard. And that's not fun. That's not a fun part of the business.
Yeah, that's the stuff that people don't see.
Yeah,
they see you at the track and your motors are winning or something like that, and I think it's all roses, and it's not like that at all, is it?
Yeah, no. Like when you asked about how long it takes to build the engine, it's kind of now it's taking a year to accumulate all the components. To the assembly of the engine, really only takes 2 or 3 days once everything's machined. But there's so much work prior to that. There's so many problems with things turning up wrong and working through all sorts of issues like that. Yeah, that's becoming, as I get older, that becomes more and more of a challenge and something that I don't really enjoy.
Yeah, so there's just as much time spent on the phone and emails and stuff, and
yeah.
So how much are you actually on the tools per se then?
A fair bit now. There's only a few of us in the workshop, so but a lot of my day is on the phone or whatever, ordering and all that sort of stuff. Kind of looks like I'm not doing anything, but I always tend to work back a bit at night. I can get so much done in a couple of hours when everyone's gone, and weekends.
Yeah.
That's when I'm mainly on the tools, and I can get a fair bit done then.
Yeah.
And I can zone out. I actually enjoy that.
Yeah. Yeah. You just get into your mojo, into your rhythm, and
Yeah. I find that a hell of a lot easier to do than sitting in front of the computer and emails and this and getting angry with people and all that.
What do you do? You just crank some music and away you go, or?
Yeah. No. I normally have something playing in the background, whether it's a movie on the TV or something, to make it feel like I'm not here all on my
own. Someone else to talk to.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So one of the good things for us sort of in SA is the thing with Bordertown coming along. Do you see a resurgence coming there with sprint cars, or?
Well, it's very exciting. I've spoken to Wayne Rowett about it, and they were hanging on getting some government funding, which they seem to have got now, which was the next hurdle. The next hurdle was to build the things that cost money, the fence and lights and things like that. And they seem to have the resources and the money now to do that. And he was pretty certain they were going to try and run by December a meeting. And from all accounts, I haven't been to the track in America that they've copied, but everyone seems to think it's one of the best, raciest tracks in America. So if they can duplicate that, it'll be great. There's all the things they've done make sense. It's going to be wide and banked and everything. Sprint car tracks and everything that a lot of tracks in Australia don't have. Generally they're older tracks and they're not designed for current sprint cars what they require. They're too narrow and a bit flattish and things like that. Mildura, a couple of years ago, they redid their track, and that's a great track now. They've made it wide. You can drive all over the place, look for a line, and it's really, really good to race on, and there's some. It's entertaining to watch. Very excited. Hopefully, some more people will bring their cars out of the shed. And get up there and support it.
Yeah,
I think it's close enough probably to Victoria to get a good car count from Victoria. I'm excited.
Yeah, I can't wait, to be honest.
Yeah, they definitely need it. It's just I see it as we're probably the worst performing state as far as the tracks and number of meetings and that in Australia.
Yeah, I suppose that's. Yeah, when you think about it, we actually don't have a whole heap of tracks either, really, do we?
No.
It seems like there's so many in Victoria. When you see the sedan stuff that races in
Nearly
Victoria,
every town
they've got so many. I know they've got like a lot more classes than us too, but they seem to be. There's so many in Victoria.
Yeah,
it's just, and that's a population thing as well. That's that's causes that as well.
Yeah.
So.
But there's saying that there's probably not too many that are really good sprint car tracks. You've got a lot of country tracks, but they're not. You take a 410 sprint car field there, and they can't cope with it. It just becomes a big old dusty, slick tyre burner type place. So, with Bordertown being built, Mount Gambier, I always like Mount Gambier. I think that's a terrific track for sprint cars when the track's right. Then very close to Warrnambool, and that it's going to be a pretty neat area in that vicinity for the sprint cars.
Yeah, they're all within a sort of couple of hours of each other. Right?
Yep.
And the diehards will travel regardless anyway.
So they put on a good show. I think they will. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty.
Bordertown's not a very big town, but hopefully, it should pull people from. If you put on a pretty decent show, you're not only from Adelaide but from across the border.
Yeah, it's like surely things like the accommodation and everything like that will go up in the town. Like it'll just the money that will get boosted there every weekend for it. Like they sort of surely they'll get behind it as a town sort of thing. Like,
yeah, I hope so. I mean, Bordertown's close enough that you can come home after the meeting though. For us here, you go that extra couple of hours, then it's a real effort to come home after the meeting. But they're very focused on finishing at an early time. They realise that nearly everyone that's going to compete there is travelling.
Yeah,
all their competitor base isn't from Bordertown, and they, and I've spoke to them, and they're very focused on having so it finishes early. Family can go there, like going to a football game. You get 2.5 hours of entertainment, and off you go. You don't want to be sitting there till midnight. Waiting for the A main to come up, and then you've got a 4-hour drive to get home.
Yeah, no, that's that'd be a hard one to swing with the missus as
well.
Yeah,
well, that's where you'd start losing spectators.
Yeah, no, I'm keen as for it. Hopefully, I can't wait. I'm hoping to talk to them soon as well. So let's see how that all goes. So so 60 motors in here at the moment.
I'd say so. There's probably about 40 or 50 that are current. There's it's probably 10 long-term jobs that we might even not get on. Some of them are mine. We might not even get onto this season. It doesn't really matter. We do some restoration type jobs. Where people are restoring sprint cars, and we've done old 372s or 360s, or I've got a an autocraft midget around the corner there, and
Yeah, right.
you know, there's a lot of them sort of jobs that aren't necessarily, you know, season to season jobs. They can be done whenever. That we're not working to a time frame. But yeah, the probably at the moment with what's got to get done for the start of the season, I'd say somewhere between 40 and 50 motors sitting there.
Yeah, right. So obviously this is the busy time of year too, that like the season sort of wound
It's
down.
a funny time a year because, you know, we're really, really, really busy, but there's nothing's time critical at this stage. You know, they've all come back. Yeah, we'll see you in September or whenever, and we'll pick it up then. So you've got all this, you know, it's not like you've got to get it done next week, but you've got to really keep pushing at them to get them all started and progressed. Otherwise, you're never going to get through anywhere near that many.
Yeah. So the guys that are heading to Chariots, their stuff's already like come and gone, or no?
No, we've still got quite a few to do there. Actually, thanks for reminding me. Yeah, no. Well, Luke Dillons is here at the moment, and a few people like that. But no, we'll get them done. You know, they're progressed. The big thing is that those ones in particular, we made sure we got all the parts, and so yeah, that's just we'll just put it, you know, the couple of days assembly time aside at some stage, and then they'll go to the dyno and they'll have them.
Yeah. So dyno's in house.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So is that is that a long operation, like running through all that, or?
Yeah, well, more or less, it's at least a full day. You know, to do a bolt up is probably up to a couple of hours, I suppose, and then we'll run a process of bedding the engine in. So we'll have a running in oil in them, and we spend quite a lot of time actually running them in. Then we'll drop the oil out. We'll give it a bit of a check over, make sure tappets and everything's seating quite nice. And we'll put some race oil in, and then, you know, we'll do all the power tuning and things like that, which if it's just to freshen up, you know, we're just going off basically what we did last time and making sure the engine's back where it was and so forth, or if we made any changes to compensate for it. And we could generally do that if we had to in a day. Generally, I like to leave it overnight after we've done the run-in process, let it cool down, get them to check the engine, then put the race oil in, and then start again and do the power running. A new engine takes a little bit longer. We'll spend a little bit more time in the bedding in process, and we'll keep more of an eye on how everything's going, because everything's brand new. So yeah, just to make sure everything's good. But yeah, you know, a day to a day and a half, I suppose, would allow.
Yeah, so then you're actually looking at about 4 days to build a brand new engine.
Pretty well.
But yeah, so it's not.
There's a lot of, you know, but by the time everything's done and assembled, assembly is probably the quickest bit, you know, but that thing might have been together 2 or 3 times before that, doing dummy up and checking clearances and working compressions out and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, there's a big process before it's actually all clean on the bench, ready to just put everything together.
Yeah, and I suppose that's all evident in like what these things are, isn't it? Like they're you know they're quite simple, but then at the same time they're sort of not as well, aren't they?
No, that's right. You know, to try and extract the maximum performance out of them, and that, yeah, you've got to, you know, look at every clearance and specification and tolerance and all that. Yeah, so yeah, you can spend some time on that side of it.
So where does well, you might not want to say, but what's a brand new one worth?
To be honest, I haven't actually finalised the figures for this year's, because everything's fluctuating too much. All the price rises in America come out at the end of the calendar year. Our dollar kind of dropped a little bit and then bounced back up. And generally by this time of year, I'd be able to tell you exactly. Last year's engines were all somewhere between 95 to 98,000, I think. This year they're going to be over 100. but I'm not sure exactly how much over.
Yeah, and does that come from like the cost of the parts is the dominant factor in that? It's not so much the labour that
No,
goes
the
into
labour
it.
hasn't really changed too much. It's definitely the price of the parts. Freight is actually a bigger consideration than what you think over all the components of an engine. Everything's got a freight component to come from America. A lot of that's nearly doubled.
Yeah.
So that's put the price of things up. They've had some significant. They've had bigger price increases in the components than what they ever have because materials are scarce and you're paying more for materials and all that, those sort of issues.
Yeah.
And now we're just seeing the end consequences of it all.
Yeah. So it's not like there's $50,000 worth of labour goes into it or anything like that.
No, probably, I wish. No, it's all the majority of the bill's components, that's for sure.
Yeah. And there's just, unfortunately, there's no way around that. And it's not like those, it's not going to go down in any way.
I can't see it. Things take a lot longer to go down. The biggest thing that would turn it around if our dollar shot up. We're at 66 cents in the dollar now, so it's quite brutal when you start working it out. But if our dollar went up to 80 plus cents in the dollar, it would make a significant difference to the end figure.
So that's another thing that you're always watching as well. Then is what the dollar's.
I wake up in the middle of the night and check my phone to see what it's doing.
Yeah.
It can fluctuate so quickly, know. And some stuff I'll prepay for, because I think the dollar's kind of at a good place, or I'll try and hang off and hope it doesn't go down any further. That bounces up a bit, and I'm only talking half a cent all the time, but when you're transferring 20-30 grand at a time, it's
massive.
Yeah.
I actually knew a guy that was into like hot rod stuff, and he had an app set up with the dollar. And when it went to its like at the premium time, he would wake up in the middle of the night and buy heaps of parts off of eBay or something like that because it would make a massive difference to like what he was doing, or buy a heap of stuff. So it's so that adds another part to the business that no one would see. So you quite literally wake up in the middle of the night.
It'll be on my mind, and I wonder what it's doing. It's like when they talk about raising interest rates or things like that. Sometimes that has a pretty big effect on the currency, and they've only just done that. So I'll kind of check on things like that. Something significant might happen in America that might be affecting the dollar. And if it's going up, you try and lock some of it, at least some of it away, because you don't know whether it's going to keep going up or plateau or drop, or it's a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and it's not really worth you going to America and packing a container yourself, is it? It's not.
Not for engine stuff. The problem with that is there's not just one supply you're buying all your components off. It's probably for an engine, might be 30 different suppliers. That make up an engine. So. Generally, everything engine-wise, we air freight. We just need it. We don't, sea freight very much at all. The car stuff's a bit different. Obviously, you're bringing over a whole heap of rear ends and things like that. It's a little bit too costly to air freight that, although I have done it at times, you'd rather put them in a container.
Yeah, and then obviously the suppliers are all spread out across America as well. They're not really in one area.
Yeah. And to try and orchestrate all them so everything's ready at the same time to load a container, it doesn't happen.
And then, like you were saying too, there's so many it's not like you wouldn't be buying the same piston every time around either, would you? There'd be so many different variants in that.
We use 3 different piston manufacturers. And we'll be customizing, trying different things all the time.
Yeah. Is there anything that you've ever wanted to try with a motor? Is there anything out of the?
With March, we tried some pretty goofy stuff. He was always that side of things was what gave him a buzz. To try and re-engineer. He is an engineer, so all that side of it. He was always keen to whatever mad ideas we wanted to come up with, but it's pretty hard to get too off track with these things because they are so basic and so forth. But yeah, we did some pretty out there stuff. Welded things up in heads and things that didn't last, but we learnt from them.
Yeah. But you've never have you personally ever wanted to see superchargers or turbos?
No. I'm actually pretty happy with where their rules are at. I think it's sustainable. Very concerned about costs of things, where it's all heading. A lot of the components are getting more and more expensive, but they don't last as long either because we're stressing them out more with the performance we're getting out of them. They're making stuff lighter, to get more performance out of them, so they don't last as long. When you're paying that much for an engine, you want to get decent life out of it, and I can't see that we can sustain building engines and getting them back after 6 shows and needing to put a lot of components in them. I think that's a bad track to go down, but it is heading that way a little bit. So that's a little bit of a worry.
Yeah. Have you anything have you ever seen the carbon fiber rods and stuff like that?
Not carbon fibre, obviously. Anything exotic in the conrod side of things is, can't run titanium rods. They'll check for them. Years ago, we seen some ceramic valves and things like that, but none of that stuff ever really took off. But yeah, there was some interesting stuff around.
Yeah, I see some pretty interesting stuff with the Honda drag racing scene. Those guys will try anything. And
you'll only got to run for down the road, and it's all over. There's kind of we're in between. It's kind of an endurance. The number of laps we've got to do per night, but we want them to be almost like a drag race engine, in performance and the RPM they're getting out of them and things like that. So yeah, it's a little bit of a compromise, really.
Yeah. Yeah,
but you hear them at the track, they're sitting up at those RPM lap after lap after lap. It's it's a very, very hostile environment for just about every component.
Yeah, your ear must be so tuned into hearing a car as well.
Somewhat, when there's a group of them, you only hear a group. You can't, obviously when you're out hot lapping or time trialing on your own, you can hear a lot, but when they're going past and there's a group, it's pretty hard to tell anything.
Yeah. So you definitely be able to hear when it's going off straight away or something like that, though? Your ears are just perked straight up.
You can usually see it too.
Yeah.
Where something's not quite right, they'll lose pace pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Pete.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for sitting down. And
no problem.
Yeah. It's it's super interesting, eh? They I don't know. They're an amazing piece of machinery, aren't they?
They're great. I love them. Yeah. I really do. I wouldn't have done it for this long and end up focusing the whole business into that one area if I didn't. I love the racing. We spoke about I like this type of raw engine. What's not to love?
Yeah. For me, it's the sound. I just love the sound of them. They're just such wild beasts. Yeah, love them. All right.
Good.
Thanks very much.
No problem. Thank you.